Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show.
Welcome back, everybody. Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
I'm John.
Big show tonight. We have we're recording on Monday, July 26th, 2021, and we're officially 38 days from the start of the football season. So that's pretty crazy that we are just a few days above a month, pretty much. So
yeah,
that's exciting.
There. It's September 2nd, right?
Yep. Thursday the 2nd against Minnesota. We know that from the media days that camp will start on August 3rd. So that's a week from today, correct?
I think so. I want to say yes. Maybe a week from tomorrow. One of the two.
Yeah, it's one or the other. But yeah, we're pretty much coming up on it. So that's pretty awesome. So we're going to talk about said media days today. As we had Ryan Day got to sit down with the press, a short press conference with the as like on the big stage, and then he had a more longer, like personal kind of press conference with than when they did their individual like breakouts and stuff like that. So we'll talk a lot about him, some stuff about off of Kevin Warren's press conference. We'll bring up some funny stuff from Harbaugh that I want to mention on his press conference. And then kind of like the big news is that, so it's been going on for a couple days now, pretty much right when the start of the media days began, but it happened officially today that Texas and Oklahoma have now officially said that they are not going to, as of the end of the 2025 media deal with the Big 12, they are done with the media rights going to the Big 12. So they are going to be free agents. All speculation that they are officially going to be petitioning the SEC to join the SEC. So we will get into that, as it seems like we are heading into another major round of expansion over the next couple years. So we will get into that. I know we both have a lot of opinions about what the Big Ten should do. Some crazy rumors out there, some not so crazy rumors that probably seem like could be more legit. But then we both have a lot of opinions. So we will get that on the second portion of the show. So media day. So Ryan Day, he had a lot of good things to talk about. I mean, a lot of coach speak. He didn't get into like, anything like outrageous, bold statements or anything like that. But pretty much the biggest thing of the conversation, which we'll start with, is that, he said that he would like to have a quarterback picked within the second week of camp, probably about 2 weeks in. And then so about mid-August, if he goes by what he says, it seems like that he would like to have a decision by then, even though he did throw in a right away that, even though we will need all of them, all these guys, I don't know how much of that was just like, just to remind them, hey, let's not, no need to like attempt to transfer now. Like, so
if that's his
what your thoughts on?
Yeah. If that's his timeline, realistically, does that give Kyle McCord enough time in your eyes to win this?
No.
If that's his timeline, I think that means it's Stroud.
That's what I think too. I heard a couple guys talking. I believe it was I was listening to Bishop and Laurinaitis today, and they were talking to Austin Ward, and I don't remember if it was Laurinaitis who said it, if it was Austin who said it, but they were kind of talking about kind of when they talked to Ryan Day, prior to the spring practices, that Like I think it was Laurinaitis because he was as a Big Ten Network official, and he was saying that kind of like it felt like that it was Stroud's job to lose, but Ryan was never going to come out and say that. If you just from what you're reading by the lines, and after we watched spring practice, I think me and you both came to that conclusion that it was definitely going to be his job. Yeah. And I don't see where there's any changes in that.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, he looked good in the spring. So assuming everything's just gone as well with working out, I'm sure Ryan even made a point to say, their bodies have changed from the last time we've seen them. So, I mean, they've all added muscle. They've gotten into better shape. They're more game ready. So, yeah, I mean, with all that being said, I think it's probably going to be Stroud. We don't know yet, but I would guess that's where it's heading. And yeah, so I like that though. I mean, I hope they do get to name one early, and I hope they can, are in a position they can stick with that.
Yeah. And I think Ryan Day is probably pretty realistic that, this is probably one of the tougher starts that Ohio State's had in a long time. If you really think about it. Minnesota's no slouch. PJ Fleck definitely has them pretty much going in the right direction. And Oregon's Oregon. I mean, they're going to be a top 10 team when we play them, most likely. We're assuming, and top 15 at the worst. And so it's probably going to be two of the harder games that we've opened up against. So he probably needs to have an idea of where he's going. He can't be wishy-washy on, kind of that situation because, you kind of have to have everybody going in the same direction for those games.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say probably then after that, one of the biggest things he really was, kind of talking about is kind of like the changes in NCAA football. He was asked multiple times about name, image, and likeness and, the transfer policy and is he costing a quarterback money by not naming anybody now, which I thought was kind of crazy, but that kind of got some traction, in the media. And it's kind of hard to pick somebody when, none of these guys have made any significant snaps. So it's like, it would have been different if Justin Fields was still there and then be like, yeah, he would have been named the starter and he could be making boatloads of cash right now. But, so just your thoughts on that. I don't know what they really, anybody is kind of expecting out of him on that.
No, I don't know. I don't really got much to say about that. That's Ryan. I understand, it's that day and age, but is Ryan Day really concerning himself with money he could be costing a quarterback because he's not ready to name one yet as the starter? I don't think that should be a concern of his.
Yeah. And then talked about playoff expansion. That was another kind of big one that I kind of liked what he said. He kind of said that he might things might be a little differently preparing for a season, that maybe he wouldn't be up as all night like he is getting ready for Minnesota and Oregon. Things could be different if there was a 12-team playoff. Definitely seems like he's in favor of one. I think there's kind of maybe a couple questions that he wants answered. I seem like he's kind of concerned about, wear and tear on them, on the players, which sure. I agree with that. That's probably a good thing for a coach to be worried about that. It is going to be a lot extra games for a lot of teams now, extra teams than we have now. Right now it's only 2 extra games. Technically 1 extra game because every one of those 4 teams would be bowl teams. So, so 2 teams are going to be playing 1 extra game than normal, but now it's going to be, a few extra games for the whole group.
Yeah. And, guys like Dabo Sweeney said that he didn't think there was a national title, which probably, most years there's not. And I know people say, well, most years the 1 beats up on the 4. And I think that's pretty much been the case more so than not. We did see the 4 win a couple times. We saw Alabama beat Clemson. We saw Ohio State beat Alabama. So it has happened before. It's not like it's impossible. 12 could definitely, in some scenario, I mean, if it's the wrong day for a team, if injuries happen, 12 could beat a 1. It's not, it's not impossible. And chances are, because aren't the ones going to get a bye anyway? So now we're probably talking about, the 8th seed or something playing the 1 or something like that. It's not, it's not going to be, most likely not going to be the 12th seed that gets to play the 1, but they do have that opportunity. But what my point is that, I was trying to get to originally before going off on that is Dabo says, well, we don't need a 12-game playoff. Well, he has the benefit of the doubt. He's never going to be, a fringe team. If he has 1 loss, they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Hell, Clemson might get the benefit of the doubt with 2 losses because they got the 2 national titles within a decade. Let Dabo, a couple more years of getting shelled in the playoffs like he's done the last 2 years, and then he's going to be one of those teams that they might not give the benefit of the doubt to. So then he might be saying, oh yeah, who knows who could win the 8th, 9th, 10th best team in the country. Who knows? But Ryan Day has seen 2 Urban Meyer coach teams that probably should have been in the playoffs and they got left out because they lost the game. So, I mean, if I was Ohio State, I would probably be saying the same thing.
Plus, and I think, and Ryan also brought up a very good point that when you look down, maybe farther down the group of teams that could get in, a lot of those teams you're going to get. I mean, let's call it what it is. The last several years of college football, I mean, nobody gives a crap about the bowl games anymore. I mean, no. I'm sorry to say that. I mean, maybe, maybe smaller schools that are getting to those bowl games, that's a big deal for them. But these top echelon teams, it just doesn't seem like it matters anymore. So you might get games where, teams that are between 7 and 12 might be, playing very intensely to get in, and you might get some big time games coming down the stretch and where teams are trying to win.
Right. Yeah, and I mean I completely agree with that teams aren't going to feel as out of it as maybe they once did. I would assume the 10th ranked team, if they're in the playoffs, you're not going to get, as many kids sitting out because they're going to be a 1st or 2nd round draft pick as what you do now because they're still, technically playing for a national title. So I think
actually, I think that will probably just completely cut that out for the 12 teams that are in it because, I mean, you are playing for a national title. So
yeah. And I think that's a positive to take away that, of course you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but you're going to get to see the best players on, any team. So that's, I think it's better for them. It's 12 too many, probably should be 8, but take whatever you can get right now. If that's where they want to go, so be it. Let them do an expansion of it.
Yeah. And then, I think, he definitely harped on a lot is that, they have 45 guys and we've talked about this before. They have 45 guys that are basically, have not gotten any meaningful reps because, between 1st and 2nd year players, because you got the COVID year from last year, you got a bunch of freshmen on the team this year. So, I think that does probably as a coach, you got to think that probably keeps him up at performance. I mean, we know that there's a lot of talent in that room, but it's a lot of raw talent that hasn't really been tested. And you don't know how these guys are going to, they've never had this type of pressure thrown in their face, even in, playing high school football. I mean, if you drop a game or two, doesn't mean you're out of the playoffs. And, if they take an L early in the season, then you have to win out or you are done for the playoffs. So,
yeah, I think they're, and I know we're just talking about the point he made, but I think Ohio State's good enough that they're not facing too tough a competition those first 2 games that they can win them. But even a loss to Oregon is not a killer. But I don't anticipate they will because they're going to have, the better lines on both sides of that game, at least in my estimation. I know Oregon returned some offensive linemen. So maybe they'll be able to hold their own against Larry Johnson's rushmen. I don't know. I don't think so. So I think if you have the best lines, you're going to be okay.
And in reality, I mean, obviously we want them to win both games, and we definitely don't want them to lose both games. But
no, that'd be a killer. That would be it.
If they would drop one of the two, I don't think it would even matter which one that they drop. I think they would still be okay because Minnesota's not going to affect their, them winning the East. And, as long as they could win out the East, they would have a win over every one of those Eastern teams. And,
as long as they don't lose by 30 to Minnesota, because that's been their kryptonite against the West is, they lose by 4 scores and then they're out of the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, knock on wood that definitely does not happen. But if it did happen, it's early enough. It's actually the first game of the season, new quarterback, and somehow that would go under a lot of people's radars come the end of the year.
I hope I don't have to see that. No more of those.
I don't think we will. But I mean, it's going to be I think it's going to be an interesting thing. You know how deep they are. I mean, I think Coach Day did talk about that. I mean, they got a lot of weapons to really, kind of mix around the ball around, the quarterback. It's just the quarterback's going to have to make plays and, he's going to have to get it to those receivers and he's going to have to do correct handoffs and all that stuff, to make sure. And then, that's his first job is just get the snap and then get it to the people that need to get the ball. And, that's a lot for a first-year quarterback, though. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. At least he's got, but, they're going to have a strong offensive line in front of him. It seemed like he's very pleased. He was talking about somebody asked him about the middle of the line, and, I mean, he's talked big-time things about Paris Johnson, just, they're one of the best kids that they ever brought in, between him and his mom and the sister that's in that family, just great family that talked about and, just how much, healthier and stronger Harry is right now. Mm-hmm. And, Matt, he had a lot of playing time too. So, I mean, they have some experience in the middle of the line where you're thinking that they have the least amount of experience, but they actually have legitimate experience.
Right. And they got legitimate talent there too. So, I mean, obviously we've talked about it how many times that, cohesion is so important on the offensive line, but Matt Jones and Harry Miller did get pretty significant playing time, and Paris Johnson, he got to come in that Clemson game and he got, he's got some cleanup time throughout the year. So it's not like the guy didn't get to play last year, but Ryan Day, he went out and said that, which I thought was an interesting point, that, Matt Jones, you could look at 10 plays from him and you could say he's a first round guard in, the NFL draft. He just has to become more consistent. And I expect it to happen.
Oh yeah, me too. I did like when he said that, definitely the goal is to get, he didn't realize Hartsock had the record of 30 receptions for a tight end. And he said that record's not going to stand any chance. So I hope that somebody actually lives up to that, because I would love to see, old record with 31 plus catches, but we'll see.
There's a lot of balls to go around for a tight end to get 30 catches in the offense. So I'm not sure. I mean, if it's a good safety valve for a young quarterback that, they might be having issues making decisions, because Rucker, he tends to get open and he can make great catches. So that's, it's good to have. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'd be awesome.
And then on the defensive side of the ball, so he started talking about the defense line. It seems like he's, I mean, like I said, it was a lot of coach speak, but it seemed like he's got a lot of confidence with the defensive tackles. I mean, what the ends are going to be, but I mean, it seemed like he was pretty glowing when he was talking about Vincent and Haskell and Antoine Jackson and just a couple of the other guys there, and then the 2 new freshmen. And it seems like he thinks that there is definitely a lot of potential there. It's time to see it. But it seems like that. I mean, we've heard some rumblings that a lot of them have been showing up in the preseason workouts and stuff like that. But if that defensive tackles become really pushed to elite level. I mean, that arguably it might be the best. It could be the best defensive line that they've had in this last decade, which is crazy to think of.
Yeah, we're talking about lines that, you had Nick Bosa, Sam Hubbard, Holmes, and Lewis on, and that we might be saying that this is a better defensive line. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. It's true, though. It could be. I mean, I would have total confidence in Larry Johnson also. So yeah. I definitely like what, he had to say. It was tough at the end of last year. I mean, you had so many guys missing at different times of the year, so it was definitely a hard end to the season, but you get all your guys back. Of course, you don't got Big Tom anymore. You don't got Jonathan Cooper, but you still got a lot of studs on that defensive line. Someone's going to step up at that other tackle, and there might be a couple guys that step up at that tackle, and that's all right. Yeah, because they're all going to play.
Yeah. If they can get into a good solid rotation like a few years ago, like when they had BB and Hamilton, and they were getting a good 4 or 5 guys in through that defensive tackle spot. If they could get that type of rotation going again, knowing what type of rotation you're going to get in the ends, I mean, that just is a killer to any other team's offense come fourth quarter time in any type of game, because I mean, you're just going to have just fresh legs bearing down on you in that game, and with the type of talent that they have there. So if they could get a legitimate rotation going into defensive tackle spot, then that's just scary to think of. Just knowing how good that their ends are going to be this year.
Yeah, everything clicking for Haskell Garrett last year. That was just that helps this year. Just those tackles get so far ahead, because I mean Haskell Garrett going into last year, he was a commodity that we knew nothing about, you knew nothing about the guy. You kind of thought he underachieved to that point. And then, he had injuries, but he came in. Yeah. He looked great last year, and hopefully he just keeps it rolling this year. And as long as he does, that line's going to be fine.
Yeah. And then we'll get the linebackers in a minute, because that's probably where they're going to be the most green this year, even though they got a deep room. So he talked about the secondary, and I did like what he said that, it's finally they feel like they got the depth there. And it seems like they finally got some players in, and health is finally, proven. He said Malik Hooker is back, so he's eligible to play again. So I don't know what he had to do to take care of those situations from his troubles, but sounds like he did whatever was required of him to get back, at least with the good graces of the coaches. Put him back on the team. So let's see what he can do. And then you got Cam Brown. He said he should be healthy. Seven Banks, I saw he got put on the Thorpe list today. And then, Court Williams is going to be healthy. There was a lot of intrigue about him in camp last year, heading into camp, that he was making a lot of noise. And then he even mentioned Lathan Ransom, how he really showed up towards the end of last season when they needed him to play. So it seems like there's some legitimate depth there, and across the board. And it's just maybe it's raw depth, but they could be there to play now.
I'm interested to see where Court Williams lines up this year. And I don't remember the exact quote. I don't have it in front of me, but didn't Ryan Day say something to the effect of a lot of guys on this team, or most guys on this team, would agree that Court Williams is the hardest worker out there?
Yeah, he said he came in, he's in there before he gets there, and a lot of times he's there before, after when Ryan Day leaves, and that's what he notices, because it sounds like he is the first guy in and out, and a lot of times Court's beating him in and leaving after him. So
yep. So I mean, you gotta love hearing that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested. He said he'll be ready for camp, and we'll see. Coming off that injury, where he can get himself on the field. If it's Bullet, if it's going to be a safety. I mean, he's too big to be, he's not going to be that slot cornerback, obviously. So we're talking safety or Bullet, and Bullet's kind of wide open. Even though Craig Young looked really good in the spring game, Ronnie Hickman, that's a good spot for him as well. But I mean, Court Williams, he could definitely be in a rotation there. watch out.
And we've heard good things about Ryan Watts too. So it sounds like they're actually really, I mean, they've mentioned a lot of guys right now in the secondary. So I'm really happy to see that. And of course, I forgot to mention Proctor, if he looks the way he looked towards the end of last year, I mean, there's a lot of positivity there. And, so I don't know. I'm pretty excited about the secondary. I think, Ryan Day, he mentioned it during the thing, Coach Combs, there was just a lot of things that was thrown on his plate last year. He just, which is everything with COVID. They had hardly any depth across the board. They had, not only do you have the injuries, but then you have all the COVID issues that, their depth was killed last year. And it just, Kerry Combs' reputation speaks for itself. I know he's doing more of a coordinator's job now, but he has put a lot of guys in the NFL at his tenure at Ohio State as cornerbacks coach. And, even as him being defensive coordinator, he's going to have a lot to say in that room. And so I expect them to really make a big time improvement in the secondary this year.
Yeah, I agree. You just by numbers alone. Cam Brown hurting them, and I know they had the two guys that didn't play that much, and they were kind of like, tween linebacker safety type bodies, but those guys getting kicked off the team at the beginning of last year. Marcus Hooker playing a position that he shouldn't, have been playing at that time. Marcus Williamson playing a position that he shouldn't have been playing. It was a bad situation all around. They didn't have the depth. They didn't have the right personnel. And mix in the COVID season where you just couldn't work on things with guys. It was just like a recipe for failure. You have a new coordinator come in that he's a defensive back guy, but he doesn't have time to actually work with his defensive backs because of all the COVID stuff that was going on. So yeah, I'm not going to, I wasn't too hard on him for any of it. I try to always find the positives in the games they had. I know just in the top of my head, thinking back to a lot of our post-game calls that we had last year, we definitely did, mention several times that there are more serious concerns in the secondary, but you can't go too hard on Combs for that. And I think this year it's just going to look a lot better.
Yeah. And then finally the linebackers. So, it seemed like, we've both said this, and I think Ryan Day kind of mentioned this a couple times. It's the room that everybody kind of wants to see where they're at, because, even though Kayvon and Taraja and Gant have been in the program for a long time, it's just they haven't got a lot of playing time. And so as much playing time as you would expect the kids that, being in the program for as long as they've been into. So it's their show now. And then you got the guys behind them, but it's where are these guys at? And, are they ready for prime time? Because, it's definitely the most scrutinized position on the Ohio State defense. It's always has been. There's a lot of big time. When you think about how great DBU is and stuff like that, and just all the cornerbacks that we've produced, but we've also produced tons and tons of linebackers over the history, and that kind of it represents the silver bullets more than anything. So it's the one position where the fan base is really, I think, the most hardest on when it comes to defense, because, they've grown up with some of the best linebackers that you can think of. And, so it'll be interesting how these guys are ready to take it to the next level, knowing that they're going to be the focal point now.
Yeah, I agree with you. They got to take it to the next level too, because like you said, the linebackers recently have been scrutinized, but I think Al Washington definitely, I think he had some work to do to kind of get these guys to forget about Billy Davis, like kind of rewire them a little bit. So I think, I honestly think it looked better in year 2 with Washington than year 1. I think it'll probably look better next year. This year, excuse me. I'm excited to see what these guys can do, that they're finally on the field. And I think, we had talked about it, just that COVID year, some of those games that Ohio State would get ahead, but then they didn't look as great as what they should have. So they kept the starters in to keep them working, because essentially that was their practice time that they missed, that was their camps for those games. And, you didn't get to see Dallas Gant, Kayvon Pope, and Taraja Mitchell. They still didn't get to play. So I think last year they would have got more playing time had the situations been a little bit more ideal for the team. Because I know there is a lot of hesitation with some of the fan base. Like, these guys going to keep, Tough Borland off the field. What are they going to do when they're the starters? But I think they would have got a lot more playing time. I just think it was just like the secondary. It was just kind of like the situation just sucked last year.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with all that stuff. I know both have talked about that on previous shows. It's just, I think that they made the decision very early in the season once they found out they were going to have a season, and they just had limited reps and everything, that we were going to just play the guys that have been with the dance with us before, because that was the most sure thing that they had. And so probably, and I think if it was a normal season, we would have got to seen a lot more from these guys. Mm-hmm. And, probably one of them, I think one of them probably would have ended up passing Tough over. And, it seemed like that. And then they just Browning kind of passed them up a lot the previous season to begin with. And, they were giving other guys some other reps. It was just, they got, again, just injuries and COVID issues, and come down to this when you see a guy like Tough on, Devontae, that, pisses everybody off, but they really didn't have much choices at that point.
Yeah. And that was another, just Billy Davis thing that, Baron Browning was a middle linebacker for as long as what he was. I mean, I know P and, so Malik Harrison? Why can't I think of his name? Yeah, I know they were fine outside backers. I mean, they were good outside backers, but Baron Browning had special athletic gifts, and he didn't belong in the middle of the field. It wasn't like, you have to have a mindset to be a Mike linebacker, and he just didn't understand the game quite like that, or was able to diagnose things that he needed to. He just needed to line up and run and make plays. And I can't believe it took them that long. It took them bringing in Al Washington to figure that out.
Yeah. So a lot of good things from Coach Day. Before we move on to some of the Harbaugh's press conference and then Kevin Warren, some of his stuff, is there anything else that really sticks out to you that you want to mention from Coach Day's question and answer periods?
I'm intrigued with the running back room still. I mean, he said about Steele worked out with the linebackers, worked out with the running backs. It's up to Steele Chambers what Steele Chambers wants to be pretty much when he grows up. So I'm very interested in that. He even said himself, three running backs is kind of like where you want to be. There's still 4 without Steele Chambers because Trevion Henderson's playing this year. So I don't know. I don't know who's the odd man out. I still, I still think maybe by the end of the day, it could be Master Teague, which he said he's the incumbent, but the skill set for what you want running backs, I'm not sure. And Master Teague is so good too. It's just like, I don't know. And I think you kind of just going off last year, you almost have to say it's Crowley, but like we saw, Crowley getting snaps, and I think they're still really high on him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. So those competitions are going to be really interesting. I'm definitely interested to see how that evolves over fall camp.
That's a conversation for another time, another show. So
yeah. So all right. So we'll go with Harbaugh first, and then we'll finish this segment on with Kevin Warren, because there's some stuff about Warren that I think that will kind of lead some of the conversations in the next segment too. So, okay. All right. So Harbaugh. So just real quickly on Harbaugh. So maybe after a bunch of years, taking Ohio State seriously might have finally clicked on him that it's important that he maybe needs to try out and go out and win this year, or have at least a decent showing to win. Maybe an old school Ohio State Michigan game where it's a very unknown final come the fourth quarter, that the game is not in hand when the fourth quarter starts. He said that, it's, basically that we can beat these guys, and we're going to do it or we're going to die trying. And so that's the quotes.
I think that's the most fitting statement there is, because I think this is the last chance. So I think exactly, he's going to beat them or he's going to die trying, because they're not. I don't think you got much. I mean, maybe if you play Ohio State to a one possession game, maybe then he gets another year. But I think this is it.
Yeah, I mean, he's had 5 games against Ohio State, 4 against Urban, 1 against Ryan Day. He's been blown out in 3 of the 5 for sure. He lost by double digits in a fourth, and then, the one where he most probably should have won, their offense could do nothing against an Ohio State team that probably is the worst Ohio State offense we've had in years. And, they, didn't do nothing offensively. I mean, it was a great Ohio State defense too, and they had a great defense in Michigan, but Ohio State's defense completely shut them down because of just being unimaginative. I mean, I'm pretty sure JT Barrett just got sacked again in that game, and
was that Taco Charlton? Yeah, was that who that one was?
They were all over him. I mean, that was just a game. I mean, I won't lie. I thought even going into the fourth quarter that somehow we were not going to, I didn't think our offense were going to just be able to come back and even score. I'm just like, they're just going to beat us just on just pure attrition. And, that nobody wants to score right now.
I mean, Malik Hooker gets a pick 6, right? In that game. And then Jerome Baker gets an interception. But he doesn't score on his. I think he just gets close. And I'm not even sure who scores the touchdown there. But yeah, it was rough. I mean, they had a horrible offense. Horrible.
Yeah.
And
so on the game that they were supposed to win, they couldn't do anything. They didn't even try on offense. I mean, granted, Ohio State's defense was really, really good, but you saw against Clemson that a very, really good defense can only go so far against an offense that's actually trying to put points up on the board.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, Clemson scored 1 touchdown per quarter, but at the end of the day, it ends up 31-0. And it's bad, real bad.
So, so that was the 5th loss, and so they've looked bad. They've looked horrendous in 3 games. They looked bad in a 4th, considering that JT Barrett gets knocked out of the game, and they should have, they let a kid that's barely played any snaps come in and beat him. And, he looked great the next year, but still, I mean, that was up in Ann Arbor.
I mean, you lost 2 games back to back, and it's not supposed to be a shot, but you lost 2 games back to back to JT Barrett. And I know one was mostly Dwayne Haskins, and JT actually did dominate them in 15. Their run offense had no plans for JT or Zeke in that game, but you lost 16 and 17 like that. Those were your chances when the offense was was really stale and stagnant in 16, but then Ryan Day was trying to turn things around in 17, and you had JT Barrett at the helm. Those were your chances to beat Ohio State, and you didn't. So
yeah,
and those games were closer. Yeah, Ohio State did not have as great of an offense those 2 years. Didn't have all the weapons, but then they got them all back. Now what the hell are you going to do? I mean, there's 10 guys they can throw to. it's not even fair.
And there's a deficiency on paper. There's a deficiency in the talent positions right now. And, and the one spot that they're expected to be really good on, that you think that what you think of Michigan is defense, but they lost a lot of guys on their defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, they're going to be pretty green on defense, and you play Ohio State the last game of the year when their quarterback, whoever the quarterback is, going to have plenty of playing time at that point.
They have a walk-on wide receiver that's going to be a starter at cornerback by that point, my friend. They're going to be fine.
Yeah. So Harbaugh might be dying this year, die trying.
Like I said, it's a fitting quote. And he's so friggin' crazy. And he wasn't as crazy this time as he normally is. Like, he wore a suit. He kind of spoke in full sentences that weren't confusing or anything like that. But then he goes off about, like the propaganda about them losing is like World War II propaganda. They don't listen to that. And what was the one? Him and his daughter were climbing the hill or the mountain, and then you got to get to the apex. And they got signs now. What are you doing to beat Ohio State? The players say they've always taken it seriously. I mean, I don't know if you caught it, Mike. They released a hype video. Finally, Michigan did. And over the years, like we've talked about the workout hype videos for Ohio State, just how they get you hyped, what they're supposed to do, violent workouts that they're tire pulls and they have boxing gloves on and they're hitting bags on the ground. Like, it looks like they're mauling punching bags on the ground. Yeah. Like, it's so physical and like gets you pumped up.
It always gets me excited.
Michigan's hype videos running hills. Like, like running hills. That's come on.
Yeah.
Not buying.
It was funny. We'll see how serious they're taking Ohio State. I mean, they should. I mean, he at least admitted that Ohio State is the best team in the conference, and that they are the team that needs to be dethroned. I mean, it's about damn time he kind of came to those terms that
right.
And all these things that they're taking it serious. That's all I heard from Michigan players, how serious they're taking Ohio State now. I've been like, well, Ohio State's beat you guys every year besides 2 years in, the last 20. And they still take you extremely serious because the way they look at Michigan now, it's not even that it's their rival. It's just that if we don't beat them, we can't go to where we want to go. And,
right.
So
I know. It's just like the rivalry's the icing on the cake, or the destination's the icing on the cake. I don't know which is which drives more, but they hate Michigan. They work out, they work every day to beat them, but then at the end of it, it's like we can't lose this game. We need to get, we need to beat these guys to get to where we want to go.
Yeah. All right. So Kevin Warren. So I'm not going to spend a lot of what he said in his press conferences. Only that he said that he would do it again after everything that last year was. If he had the choice to do it again, he would do it again.
I mean, what a pompous, what just an arrogant guy Kevin Warren is. I mean, last year, the decision won't be revisited. I would change nothing. I have no regrets. Like, how can you say you have the gift of hindsight? And I'm not even just talking about Kevin Warren, just the gift of hindsight for any situation. And you can say, I would do everything, 100% the way I did it last year. In an unknown situation like what we had, he's going to say that he got it 100% correct and wouldn't change anything. Like, that's just crazy. Like, he's not being truthful, but two, I mean, just like the fact that once again, he can't come out and just admit that he could have done things better.
He doesn't even have to all he would have had to say, and I think he would have won some people over, maybe not out inside Ohio State's or Nebraska's program, but around
not us,
conference. But I think if he would have just come out and said, we made the decision we made based on the information we had at the time. We revisited it when we got new information. Maybe I could have did the little things better. And, in retrospective, it was my first year on the job. That's a lot to be thrown at me. Not trying to make any excuses, but, it was just a lot of unprecedented times to be dealing with something as crazy as COVID. And, he's like, so we did what we had to do with the information we had. But once we got new information, we changed our mind. And look, one of our teams made the national championship game. So at the end of the day, it was probably the right decision to play football again. And I think that would have made a lot of people feel a lot better if he would have just said something like that. He didn't have to come out and apologize and ask for forgiveness or anything like that. I mean, it is a hard decision. And and probably, I don't know, I might have made the same choice if, the information I was given that they were given. I mean, I wish they would have shared some of that information, but they didn't. They weren't necessarily entitled to. And so, but I think there's ways to make yourself come off as more gracious or more, like just better looking than, just be like, nope, I made that decision I made, and I would make that decision again.
I mean, my opinion on it, and this is actually going back to just the decision of last year, not what he said, because he's just I don't know. And I don't want to call him an idiot, but I mean, that was just BS what he said at his conference. But no, going back to the decision though, I mean, you are a brand new commissioner in the richest conference in football, or, in sports, and you can't be the first guy. You can't be the first guy to say we're done. You need to have a more seasoned commissioner, at one of the other leagues say, hey, we're not playing this year. And then you can follow suit. You can't be the first one though.
Yeah. And I think that's something Delaney would have done. And I get it. It's the president's choice and stuff like that. But I think somebody like Delaney, and a lot of people dumped all over Delaney over the years, and some of it's rightfully so, but he was definitely much more seasoned. And I think he would have probably been one of those commissioners, probably been like, maybe we should give it a couple weeks. We shouldn't be the first ones. If somebody else does it, then, we'll revisit it then. Let's postpone a couple weeks and the season, and then let's see where we're at. But, we shouldn't be the first conference to do it, because what if nobody follows suit, which basically outside the Pac-12, nobody followed suit. So.
And you could have even made the decision there, and you kind of said, like, postpone it. You alluded to it. He could have just said, hey, our season starts October 1st or whatever it would have been. First Thursday in October, last Thursday, last Friday, whatever in September. Just say, hey, this is when we're playing. We're taking a couple weeks to see what's going on. And Kevin Warren had that opportunity. They had every chance to make that decision. They didn't. So to say something like, oh, I would do the same thing, I have no regrets, I would play it 100% the way we did it before, is just an asinine statement, because that could have been handled so much better. Even he should have said, I should have been more up front with people. I should have been more forthcoming, should have been more transparent. Like he had every opportunity at his press conference to even talk about those downfalls. But again, he said, no, I would have handled it the exact same way. So guy is still, not winning any brownie points, at least with me after that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know why they ended up giving him more time. They added more time going into the thing, onto his question and answer period, and it was basically crap is all we got. So I don't know what the point even was. They might as well just given him no question and answer period.
I mean, I read quotes. I didn't actually listen to it. So did they at least give him some softballs to look good?
I'm sure. I was in and out of that one. I listened to it a little bit after the fact. I was following around a little bit on Twitter, but I mean, like you, I didn't really to pay a lot of attention to it.
I mean, I heard, at least I heard that quote looks good.
Yeah.
I don't think they
I don't think they did, because I didn't hear any positive things that he made. I saw a lot of reporters say, I can't believe he's leading a conference.
Well, I mean, didn't something come up about some realignment happening in college football, and he didn't know about it, or he didn't have any plans to do anything with his own conference with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going there now. Okay. So
about that.
Going into last week, so going into the media days, the rumbling started about midweek that Texas and Oklahoma, wanted to go to the SEC, and that they, wanted to leave the Big 12. At first, when I heard that, I'm like, why? There's no way these two are going to the SEC. Like, why would you want to go to the SEC? You have it perfectly made right now where you're at. Oklahoma's pretty much making the playoffs every other year, it seems like. And, they're still in prime to win the Big 12 every single year. And Texas, which has been down, you would think for a new coach, been like, yeah, the Big 12 is just the smarter decision right now, but let's go mix it up with the big boys in the SEC. So At first, I just thought it was one of those crazy rumors that there's no way. It wasn't that I couldn't see Texas and Oklahoma leaving. I just didn't see them leaving to the SEC. So that's the first thing. Then the next day, it seemed like it was, and then it just started getting more real and real and real. And then like legitimate reporters started having it. Yeah, this is definitely happening. They're going to they're going to tell the Big 12 next week to pretty much go pound, you know what? And, they're petitioning the SEC to join the conference. And then you find out that, this is when they're doing all the playoff expansion talks, is that the SEC commissioner and ESPN have been pretty much in the room with them, and everybody's going forward in game on this outside of A&M, who has no idea what's going on. Because
I find that the best. That's the best part. A&M can't be trusted with this information. They're going to argue about it.
Yeah, and I'm sure they probably would have been the ones that would have leaked it. So, because they would have wanted to stop it right from the beginning. And, so you get all this stuff. And then by the time Saturday rolls around, you know, it's happening. And it's like, it just seems like when I heard that the Big 12 were going to offer, Texas and Oklahoma pretty much 50%, I'm just like, this is definitely happening. I mean, they're basically just got here, you guys take half the revenue and, we'll all be quiet. Like,
man, and you kind of got a feel for A&M on this, but yeah. I mean, there's even reports that Oklahoma and Texas talked to the Big Ten first.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's all speculative right now. Who knows if that's true or not, but man, I've
heard you shared it with me, and then I've read it a few places now too. It seemed like they talked to somebody ahead of time, and the only other one that would make sense is the Big Ten. And there's no A's. I mean, I don't see them talking to the ACC, maybe the Pac-12, but I doubt it.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just that the Big Ten makes the most sense there. And, you know, this AAU thing, and it's not the AAU leagues. It's some people have asked on Twitter, it's like, what does AAU have to do anything with college sports? It's like, no, it's the Association of American Universities. It's a group of universities that is just, I mean, these are some of the biggest research universities in the country. There's a lot of money in research grants, as a lot of people don't know. The Big Ten is very big in that, you know, they basically have a commitment between all their Big Ten schools that not only do they kind of pool money when it comes to athletics, but they also share money on the research side of it. And, you know, that's a lot more money than athletics brings in.
Sure.
So the Big Ten, they want an AAU school because those are big research universities. Now, Nebraska was one when they came in. They are no longer one. So 13 out of the 14 Big Ten members are part of the AAU. Now, that's supposedly the reason why Oklahoma is a no-go, even though Texas would be a go because Texas has everything that they're looking for. To me, if you could get Texas and that fits what you're looking for, Oklahoma is a big enough athletic brand that you can be like, okay, they can kind of think outside the box a little bit and be like, we're at least getting what we want on one of the two, and we're getting everything we want athletically on both of them. So let's do this. This makes sense for us. It's
right. It's just, kind of like greed. And I mean, Oklahoma, you're still going to make a pile of money off of them from athletics. So like, you could have just been happy with it. But I mean, what they said is they weren't one of those universities, and that's why they wouldn't consider them.
Yeah. And even then, even if they would have went to Oklahoma and been like, we want you guys to become one of these universities. We are leaders in the Big Ten. We will help you guys get there. And like, that would have been like something to me that it's just, I don't know how you turn these two schools down. Like,
no,
if they are a package together, like, how do you like look anybody in the face in that room and just be like, yeah, we're not taking these two teams? And because Oklahoma, if Texas wants in, we'll take Texas, but Oklahoma, no, that's a hard no.
I mean, you're talking about, had an in to so much of Texas market and you just laughed at it. You said no.
Yeah.
Like
when Texas has got, I mean, the Longhorns are, well, first of all, Austin's one of the, just like Columbus, two of the fastest growing cities in the country. Austin's one of those. Then you got the Dallas market and the Houston market, which are both top 10 markets in this country, TV markets, that there are a ton of Longhorn fans in those two markets. And you're going to be like, I know we don't want those. We don't want those two markets. No.
And there's a lot of people from Texas that love Oklahoma.
Yeah. And so, and then the kicker to me is, and I don't know how much of this is just rumors being thrown out there, but there's some legitimate people, Big 12 people that have now brought this up, that the Big Ten is strongly considering Oklahoma State. And again, they don't have AAU status. So like, I will flip out if they come and be like, oh, welcome Oklahoma State because they need a legitimate school now and they refused Oklahoma. I'd be like, you know, there should be a lot of people fired over this.
And I mean, I know I said like, you know, the border, like there's a lot of people in Texas that like Oklahoma, and let me rephrase or like, you know, put that disclaimer on there that I didn't mean like, you know, Austin, Texas. You've got a lot of people from Oklahoma that love, or a lot of people from Austin that love Oklahoma. I mean, your borders, but Oklahoma itself, Oklahoma's not a big market. So why would you want the little brother of, you know, the better team of a state that's not a big market? Like they don't offer the Big Ten anything.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, yeah, you offer them a decent football team coming in, but it's not a better football team than what you could have had.
It's not a splash if you're gonna put your foot on the ground and say no to Oklahoma because the AAU status. You better do the same thing when it comes to Oklahoma State. Like if you let Oklahoma State in because now you got egg on your face and you want somebody more than Kansas, you know, and we'll get to that in a minute because I got a lot to say about that one. That you want a decent football program in there. You could have had Oklahoma and Texas.
You could have blue bloods. Like at least Nebraska. I mean, I know they weren't what they, you know, wore when they came to the Big Ten. You know, they weren't who they wore years past, but at least they're still a blue blood. What does Oklahoma State offer you?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like people talk about Iowa State, like they're an upcoming. What is Iowa State doesn't offer you anything?
Oh, no, definitely not. So now the SEC is going to have everything that they have now, plus Texas and Oklahoma.
It's crazy.
It sounds like it in the near future. And so now it seems like the other conferences are kind of in an interesting position because do you stand pat? Do you don't? What does Notre Dame finally do? I mean, a lot of people say this is finally Notre Dame is finally probably going to join the ACC for real. And which it seems like that's going to happen. The 12-team expansion seemed like it was going to make it happen because they would have never have been able to get a bye, which they would, you know, be eligible to get a bye on being in part of a conference. Cause I think
they already get a bye not playing a conference title game. They get a bye.
That's true. But you know, I still think that they would want to bye. And, so, I mean, we'll see what happens there. But and I don't actually believe this, and I'll believe this when I see it. And I should say I do believe it because it is the Big Ten we're talking about. So Iowa State and Kansas are the two names being thrown out there. I don't think that they're that stupid. First of all, I don't want Kansas. A lot of people, I've said this multiple times on Twitter, and a lot of people have come back to me, well, that's a basketball play. First of all,
why?
College basketball is as popular as March Madness doesn't move the needle like people think it does. Football moves the needle. And anybody who wants to argue that point with you, college basketball regular season ratings, they're okay. Like they don't do
not that great. I mean, like you said, I mean, it doesn't move the needle. And if someone wants to argue with you, it's a waste of your time. Don't even engage that person. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, the only exciting time of college basketball season is the conference tournament and the March Madness. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's some diehards out there that would disagree with you, but there are far less college basketball diehards than there are college football diehards. And, and football has just become so ingrained in our country. Like this isn't me just being a biased college football fan. Like, when you look at ratings, the top two sports in the United States of America are the NFL and then NCAA football. That is 1 and 2. Like, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, none of those are past college football. Like, so, and that's legitimate stuff. So, like, that moves the needle. And
let's be honest. I mean, it is a lot because you're a biased college football fan, but you're not wrong in what you're saying. Like, even if that is 70% of why you want the teams you do, it's not wrong. You got the numbers to back it up. I mean, it's just so much more popular than basketball.
So if Kansas and Iowa State are just a no-go for me, being the only two. Kansas is really a no-go. Iowa State is a school I would take if they get a few other schools to go with them. Like, if they come in and say that they got a, and I know there's some talk about the Pac-12. We will get to the Pac-12 in a minute. Personally, in my dream scenario right now, I'm going into, even though they're a stronger conference, they got an awful TV deal. I'm going into the ACC. And if basketball has got to be a thing, I'd much rather go get North Carolina, which has got football potential. They are a growing high school football state. UNC is looking really good right now as in a college football team. Mm-hmm. And, and then you could get Duke. And if we're just doing basketball, I'd much rather bring in North Carolina and Duke, where at least one of them's got a football power. You got a state that's got football power. There's no good high school football in Kansas. There's good high school football in North Carolina. I would go get
and Duke's a better football team than Kansas too.
Yeah, exactly. Virginia, I would get Virginia. Mm-hmm. And not so much that I'm necessarily like gung-ho about the University of Virginia, bringing them into the thing, but at least, again, a good high school football state, and it's a good state to have your conference have alignment to. And then finally, the last one is Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and because gives you the TV market you want in the Atlanta TV market, and it gets you in a good high school football state again. Right. And it just all makes sense. And those 4 schools right there give you all AAU. So if that's important to you, they're all that. And so I think there's a much better potential upside to those 4 schools coming in than Kansas and Iowa State.
I 100% agree with you. Go to a place that is going to give you decent competition in football, also give you a great recruiting footprint though.
And you know what? That's 4 schools right there. That gets them to 18, I believe. If they decide they want to go to 20, then you know what? Go see if Kansas and Iowa State want to become part of the Big Ten. I would like that. That is something where you can come in and say that, okay, Kansas and Iowa State fit because we at least got some legitimate schools on this other side of it. But that it's just, I don't know. Kansas and Iowa State just don't do anything for me. Now, the Pac-12 thing, there's been some talks that they might go after the big upper echelon schools of the Pac-12, which again, it fits into the AAU thing. There's been talks about Oregon. There's been talks about Colorado. There's been talks about both LA schools. There's been talks about Washington. I mean, Stanford's been thrown out there a little bit. I would love that. I just don't know how it works outside of football, because how do you travel?
Right.
You would almost have to make some sort of like conference fund to help all the schools travel with the non-revenue making sports. And so I just don't know how it works.
I'm with you on that. It'd be cool. I mean, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong, but the travel's not realistic. I don't see how you can make it work. Even with football, that would suck. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though they would get one more, I did see somebody bring up, they're like, they would get one more time slot because you would have football after dark.
Yeah, that's true. That would be cool.
Even though Ohio State would always probably be a prime time or a noon game, could you imagine if like Ohio State was playing UCLA at 10:30 at night out on the West Coast?
Oh. I don't want to imagine it. I mean, I'm sure the people out in LA would be like, that'd be awesome for them, but oh my God. I mean, 10:30 on a Saturday with college football, I'm in bad shape by that. I'm not making that game.
Yeah. So yeah, I just don't see where those work. So I don't know which way the Big Ten is going to go in this one. I think that if they're going to expand into the ACC and try to pull some of those teams out there. Even Pitt, who again it would give them that AAU school, because Pitt is an AAU school. You know, them and Penn State would have some natural rivalry there. But outside of that, I mean, the only other option I can think of, and it's not a Big Ten option, it's more of an Ohio State option, and that is just that I think Ohio State needs to start keeping an open mind about this, that when does it time that they've been a good partner with the Big Ten. They've been a good member. Especially over the last 2 decades, they have definitely put the interests of the conference in front of their, how powerful of a university they are. And, I think that they probably need to start thinking that in the back of their head, they need to be like, start thinking about some of their self-interest. That I get nervous, especially with how good Ohio State's recruited Texas, that do we lose that footprint over the next decade because, now you have every SEC school being able to fight in there where,
Yeah. I think absolutely we could. And I know there's a lot of people that, love Ohio State that we're friends with on social media. We love Ohio State. I mean, obviously, most times when it comes to college football, I see things through scarlet colored lenses. I mean, I'm always going to be a homer, but let's be realistic about it. You got 2 teams now in Texas that are going to be SEC. The SEC is the premier league in college football, and those guys are going to want to play against the best competition and be developed and play in the SEC. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know the impact it could have on the next 2 classes because they still have some time in the Big 12, but I think you're going to start seeing, though, that, kids that maybe at one time Ohio State could go in and pull out of Texas. They're either going to go to Texas or somewhere else in the SEC.
They might even go to Texas, but they might say, you know what? I can play I can play where family can watch me and go play at LSU or go play at Auburn.
Right.
And Alabama gets their fair share of Texas to begin with, but some of these other next level down SEC schools where, how does this help Florida and Georgia and LSU and Auburn? It helps them tremendously that, they can, I mean, we know how hard it is to recruit into the SEC. I mean, Ohio State is on a lot of big name players, top 5, top 10s, top 3s in SEC country. But, we have a much higher batting average right now in Texas than we do in the Southeast. And so
yeah, it's kind of worrisome. I mean, because especially if the SEC talent-wise, if they're just going to surpass the Big Ten, especially with, if they're starting getting more Texas kids, then that's going to change the whole landscape of things. That kids are going to stay in the SEC. They're going to, right now, like you kind of got things more spread out. Like you got a lot of kids from a West Coast footprint that are over here, on the East Coast because they want to play for better teams and be developed. And they might just exclusively go to the Southeast because that's where the better football is being played. It's going to be seen as an upper echelon league. It's going to be seen as a league all to itself.
Yeah. I think a lot of college football fans, they don't put into perspective how much demographics has to play with everything. Ohio is still Ohio. High school football in Ohio.
Mhm.
I mean, it's pretty much every major, thing you see has Ohio rated as the 5th best high school football state in the country behind the big 3 in Georgia. So, Ohio is 5th. But this region of the country is just population shrinking. Every year there's just less and less talent. And now Columbus is a very growing city. Columbus is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. That's really good for Ohio State. Cincinnati's also a very growing city. That's again good for Ohio State in a lot of respects. Northeast Ohio, where we're from, not so much. And, this used to be the bread and butter of the state of Ohio for a lot of, the manufacturing prowess that was here at one point. Well, that part of Michigan, like Detroit and stuff, that's Northeast Ohio. Michigan used to get tons of players out of there. Chicago, a lot of the area of Chicago is, it's still one of my 3rd most populated city in the country. It just doesn't grow like at one point Chicago grew at. Pennsylvania, outside of when you get in between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, which are so many Penn State players have come from over the years, you just don't see it anymore. These are territories that are just slowly going down. So, and I hope Columbus keeps it up, but in 10, 15 years, is Columbus still as growing as fast as it is because, or more people moving into the South, like all the trends right now are. So I think just Ohio State just needs to be very cautious about some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is it got to be a little on the open-minded side too of how to keep progressing forward. I mean, I think Ohio State's going to be fine. I think Ohio State will, withstand any sort of shift in college football, but you also don't want to get left behind either. And I just think the Big Ten has obviously, I mean, it just seems like they keep showing that that's not a priority. Football is not a priority with the Big Ten.
I think Ohio State's realistic, but I think that the rest of the Big Ten, I think a lot of them are living in a conference that was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I think it's time to start waking up. They are really living on, Ohio State makes a lot of money for the conference. A lot of this TV deals that they're getting, Ohio State is one of the biggest driving forces behind it. So, the next SEC TV deal is going to be ungodly. Like, what is that TV deal? Especially when, ESPN was one of the ones who really pushed it. So, and so it's just open mind. And, I think Ohio State, if I was Gene and if I was the, President Johnson, I would be maybe keeping in my mind that maybe we should get a little block together. We're not leaving the Big Ten, but maybe we should talk to Michigan. We should talk to Penn State and maybe Nebraska and just be like, if we have to leave because this conference just doesn't have the best interest anymore, are we prepared to do that? And I know a lot of people are going to say, we've talked about the AAU status and the researcher status. Well, let's just say they make a pact with Michigan and Penn State. Well, those are AAU schools. There's a lot of AAU schools in the ACC. Is there a point that maybe they go to the ACC? And to me, that is the most obvious choice for them. And then a couple of these schools and just be like, it's not us going to raid you guys, but are you guys interested in taking us? And maybe then Notre Dame comes in too.
Yeah. And I could see that also. Like we've said, you got to keep an open mind on this stuff. I mean, I don't want the scraps of the Big 12. I'm sorry. That doesn't help your conference at all. Don't take them. I mean, is outside of Texas and Oklahoma, how many 4 or 5-star players are even left in the Big 12 at that point?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't want them. No, don't.
Yeah.
You don't want the scraps of the Big 12. So just, yeah, I mean, talk to some ACC guys. The Pac-12, I mean, it's an interesting thought. I don't think the travel is realistic with it. So like you said, maybe, you got to be open, talk about joining another conference if things. I mean, I think the schools you talked about, they have to get together and they got to talk to the rest of the Big Ten and be like, hey, you guys are going to let football have a voice here because this is important to us. So football needs to have a voice, or we need to start thinking about what's in the best interest of our schools.
Yeah.
And then you go from there.
And you can always make academic pacts other places. Like
Absolutely.
you don't always have to be part of the same conference to have a academic pact with schools. Like, I mean, I always thought that was kind of the craziest. I mean, it's nice that they did it, but I mean, I never understood it. Being like, why can't we just keep academics on one side and athletics on the other side? Like, there's a lot of good universities around the country that are not in Big Ten schools. Like, if Ohio State wants to create a pact with all of that, with a bunch of those schools, and, have more options with football in their athletic program, maybe that's something to really look into down the road. Who knows?
Or you know what? If signatures aren't on paper yet, go get Texas and Oklahoma.
That's the other thing is thrown out there. I wonder how, I wonder if they haven't officially made their petition yet, maybe they try to come in and jump. Sounds like Oklahoma has some issues with Big Noon. So maybe Fox has to kind of compromise a little bit.
Maybe Fox has to compromise a little bit on when they want their primetime game on. But but they also, I mean, I don't know how much Oklahoma, because you will have bigger fan bases also if you're in the Big Ten. So you might not be leaned on as much for the Big Noon games. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I would say they probably prefer Ohio State in the Big Noon slot than they do Oklahoma, but I mean, I'm sure it's close. Like,
I'm sure that though they're probably since the Big Ten's been with Fox, I would say they're probably fairly equal, but they're probably the top two. And it always seems like if it's a Big 12 game on at noon, it's always Oklahoma. But if it's a Big 10 game, it's always Ohio State. So,
well, I mean, they're not idiots. They know what's going to get them money.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we'll call it a night on that one. Unless you have anything else you want to throw out there.
No, it's a lot to unpack, and there's still a ton about like realignment, just questions and thoughts that are still out there. So, anyone that wants to, engage us on Twitter or leave a comment on the video, if you guys want to have a conversation about it, we'll answer any questions. Yeah. Absolutely. But there's just so much still to talk about. I mean, it's just crazy. You never thought this would happen, but I mean, the two big guns in the Big 12 just decided to kill the conference, and it's just kind of incredible to think about. I think next week we'll start talking, or next show we'll probably start talking a little bit about depth chart and about the team, and start trying to actually move into a season preview type, start working that way.
Yeah. And I do want to mention one last thing, and this goes to the Big Ten. Now, granted, kind of what we just said about keeping an open mind. You just had two arch rivals basically decide what was best for them as a whole. And, they joined another conference together, even though they are hated rivals so much. So there is always opportunities that an Ohio State and a Michigan and a Penn State kind of could get together and be like, you know what? This is just not working for us anymore.
If Michigan makes a football decision, like I will be more stunned than if Jim Harbaugh beats Ohio State this year.
I think the way for Michigan to have to be on board is that if this would ever happen, I would almost think Ohio State would have to approach Penn State first and like get them on board, and then go to Michigan and be like, we're both leaving. So,
well, and I know this just keeps continuing the conversation on. We will get out of here in a minute, but the Big 12 doesn't have the history. Obviously, the Big 10 does, but I mean, people have said, well, there's no way Ohio State would ever leave the Big 10. Like you just said, Texas and Oklahoma just said, screw you to the Big 12. So anything's possible, especially it's college football's changing, and we all know it's changing. So football is very powerful in Columbus.
And they're talking about decentralizing the NCAA. I mean, whatever that is. I mean, we didn't even get back to that tonight. I mean, we'll talk maybe about that later, but like, yeah. So like, I mean, do we even have a governing body over athletics anymore?
Only when it's time to punish people, Mike. They don't want anything to do until they have to punish somebody.
Yeah.
Then they're like Roger Goodell. They're worse than Goodell. They're worse than him. But yeah, that's what they're there for. They're only there to punish. They want no other responsibility. They wanted nothing to do with COVID protocols. They wanted nothing to do with schedules. But when it's time to give someone a bowl ban, they want to be there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll get on out of there with that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping in tonight at the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH.
Oh.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.